Hello guys, so this is a demo on test case designing and execution. So to define a test case, we define it as a set of inputs, execution conditions and expected results are developed for a particular objective to verify whether it is compliant with the specific requirements or not. So in simpler terms, if we want to understand what a test case is, so test case is something that you create in a step-by-step fashion so that your requirements can be verified. So there are two different types of testing that we have to do on any given requirements that we have. The first one is known as the requirement based testing. So in this particular testing, we test the application, we test the product based on the information that we have received in the requirements and the specification document given to us by the client. And in order to do the requirement based testing, we have to create or we have to write the requirement based test cases. So which is also known as the RBTs. So during this type of testing, we first analyze the requirements. If needed, we would gather more information according to the needs for that particular set of requirements. Then we create our test cases. And while you write your test cases, you have to make sure that you are writing at least one positive and one negative test case. Talking about the scenario based testing. So scenario based testing is done to test the user behavior or the experience that the end user is going to face while using the application. So the behavior that the user is going to achieve out of this application is something that is not captured in the requirement document. So this is something that the tester has to understand or has to visualize it as an end user and do this type of testing, which is known as the scenario based testing, or we also know as SBT. So when you do scenario based testing, you have to be specific in writing your scenario based test cases for these different tips that we see on the slide here. So the first thing is that you list down the possible users and analyze their interests and objectives when they use this application. So that is the first step. And then you list down the events that may happen during the application. So there are some system events that may occur, and then there are some special events that may happen. So you have to understand these events first, and based on these events, then you have to write down your scenario based test cases. You should know what are the things that are supposed to happen when the system is used, and then again you have to write at least one test case per user experience when you are writing the scenario based test cases. So these are the two different types of testing that we perform, and then you have to create two different types of test cases, which are the requirement based test cases and the scenario based test cases. So talking further about the test cases, so these are the components that go down into creating a test case. So the first thing is the test case ID, then comes the test case description, its priority, the preconditions that would ensure that you are in that state that from where you can execute the test case, your inputs, your steps that you are going to follow when you execute the test case. After you follow these inputs actions, what is it that you are expecting that the test case should give you as a result? So that goes down into the expected result when you create the test case. So when you execute the test case on the application, you are going to fill out the actual result, and then based upon a comparison between the expected and the actual result, you are either going to call out this test case as a pass or a failed test case, which you are going to document in the result column. And if there are any special comments or any test data that you need to mention, so that is going to be a part of the comments and the test data column. So there are a number of ways through which you can manage your test cases. On the tools side, the most popular tool that is used for the test case management is TestRail. Another one is Test Studio. Whereas on the manual side, the most popular way of documenting your test cases is in the Excel sheet, or else you can also write your test cases either in the Word document, or you can create a checklist. All right, so now let's see a practical demo on how to create test cases using an Excel sheet first. So this is the format that we are going to use for creating our test case. And in order to us to write a test case, let's assume that our application that we are testing is the site of our own company, which is qagenic.com, and we are on the contact us page. So let's assume that we are going to test out the contact form here, which is known as get in touch. So my first test case here that I will be writing in the Excel sheet will start something like this, wherein I can give a test case ID, or I can say that this is a test case 001 with a description of verifying that the contact form is accepting valid entries. So that would be my test description. And for the priority, we give the priority of all the test cases between high, medium, and low. So for my website QAgenic, I am pretty sure that this contact us form is a very critical feature, and if this is not working, it is definitely going to impact our business. So for me, the priority of this test case is going to be high. And the prerequisite, if I see for this particular test case, is that QAgenic's website should be up and running. And that is what a prerequisite would actually be defined like, that these are the things, or these are the conditions that are necessary in order for us to go and execute the test case that we are currently creating. So definitely this is a precondition that the QAgenic's website should be up and running. Then only I, as a user, would be able to come to the contact us form and either put in the invalid or the valid entries in the form. So that is my prerequisite. In the inputs and actions, what I will have to do here is I have to write down the step-by-step actions that I am going to perform on the contact us form to verify that it is accepting valid entries. So for doing that, first I have to go back to my contact us form to see what are the different fields that we have here. So the first field that I see is a full name field. So my first thing here would be to enter valid characters in the full name field. Then my second step here would be to enter a valid email ID. So I will again go back to my test case and I will write enter valid email ID in the email ID field. And after I am done writing the second test case, I'll see the third step here is the third field here is the phone number field. So I'll again come back to my test case. Again, I will go down to the third step. I'll say enter a valid phone number in the phone field, and then move on to the fourth step. I'll go back to my website and see that there is a drop down through which I can select a course or I can select a QA service. So I will write in my test case that select a valid course or service from the select course drop down. And then on the website, I will again go back and see that there is a text field which is named as message. So my next step here would be to enter a valid message in the message text box. Now, if I see I am done with entering valid inputs in all the fields here, and then the final step here would be to click on the submit button, which would take me to the next step. So what I do as the sixth step here is that click on the submit button. So now what I have done is I have written down a test case in a way wherein I have 6 steps, which are entering valid entries in all of the fields that we see here. And in addition to that, it is then going and clicking on the submit button. So what I now do is, as a requirement based test case, I know that after I click on the submit button, the user should be able to save the form successfully, and he should be displayed some message of confirmation that the form has been submitted. So my expected result here should be something like this: the user is able to successfully submit the form, and the application should show a confirmation message. So that is my expected result that I would be putting in while I am creating the test case. So moving on, the actual result is something that we are going to put down when we are going to execute these steps, which we would see next on the application. And then we will see from the application's behavior whether the application is behaving right or not. And based upon the application's behavior, we are then going to enter the actual result at the time of the test case execution. And when we know the actual result, then we are going to do a comparison between the actual result and the expected result to know whether the test case is a pass or a failed test case. So here in this column, we can go in and add in more information or any references that we have taken to create this test case, or you can even go in and put your test data. So this is how you create a test case using an Excel sheet. So now let's do one activity of executing the test case that we have created right now. So what we are going to do is, we know what the test description is, what the priority is, what the prerequisite is. So we'll start executing our test case from the prerequisite column itself. So the prerequisite says that the QAgenix website should be up and running. So what I'll do quickly is give a refresh to this particular page, so I would know whether the application that we are testing is actually working or not. If it is not, then our test case or our application will fail at the precondition level itself. All right, so what I see here is that after a refresh, I can see that the QAgenix website is up and running. So we are good to go ahead and execute our inputs or the steps that we have written. So here, let's go down and read each and every field, every step that we have written down, and accordingly enter characters or whatever entries we have in the test case in our application. So the first step here says that enter valid characters in the full name field. So I am going to my application, I click on the full name field here, and I am going to enter some valid character. So I'll enter my own name here, which is Akhil Bansal. I go back to my test case. I see that the second step is saying that enter valid email ID in the email ID field. So I am going to enter a valid email ID, which is of the right format, testing@test.com. I go back to my test case here. I see that the third step is enter a valid phone number in the phone field. So I am going to put down a valid phone number here. And then the fourth step here is of selecting a valid course or a service on the select dropdown, or on the select course dropdown. So I'm going in and going to select a manual and automation course. And then the fifth step is talking about entering a valid message in the message box. This is a test message is what I'm going to enter. And the final step here says that I have to click on the submit button. So before I click on the submit button, I am also going to read out and know what the expected result should be from the application that I should be seeing. So the expected result here should be that the user should be able to successfully submit the form and application should show a confirmation message. So now let's go down and hit on the submit button. So as soon as I hit the submit button, I am now waiting for my application to give me what result it is going to show us. So I am still waiting. So what I see that I have a message here. Thank you for your message. It has been sent. So this is the confirmation message that the user has received. And through this confirmation message, I know that the form has been successfully submitted. So I know that the actual result here that I have to put now. So what I will do is that user was able to successfully submit the form and is getting the following confirmation message. So we can even go down and do a copy paste from our application that this is the message that we are getting on the application after we have successfully submitted the form. So now the next thing that we have to do is do a comparison between the expected and the actual. And here we know that yes, what we were expecting is what we are actually seeing on the application. So we can go in and say that this is the past test case. So had it been a failed test case, or let's assume that we are now going in and writing another test case with invalid submissions, I'll quickly write down a little text for our own understanding. So this would be an invalid submission that we are probably doing, and then there would be similar type of steps that would go down into the inputs and the actions, and there would be an expected result. And on the actual results, let's assume that the application is unable to submit the form. So in that case, what we see here is that there is a mismatch between the expected and the actual results. So my test case here would be called as a failed test case. And in that condition, what a tester has to do is go into the defect tracking tool and submit a defect for it. And after you have submitted a defect, there would be a unique defect ID that would be generated. So that defect ID has to be put down into the additional reference column here. Something like this is what you are going to get out with the defect tracking tool. So this is going to tell us that on the failure of this particular test case, we have reported a defect with this particular unique ID that we can go into the defect tracking tool and make a reference to it directly from here. All right, so this is how you create test cases using an Excel sheet. This was just a sample. So once you have the application requirements with you, so for all of the requirements that you have, you are going to create a number of test cases which would range from anywhere around 100 to 500 to 1000. So it all depends upon how large, how complex your application is, how big your requirements are. So this is how you're going to write your test cases in an Excel sheet. And now let's also look at another way of writing your test cases, which is through a test case management tool. So let me quickly go back to the dashboard of this particular tool, which is known as TestRail. So this is a test case management tool. And here what I have done is created one project, which is known as MSTT Jan 2022. And when I click on this particular project, I see that there are some results which are displayed to me, which are telling me out of all the test cases that we already have in place, 2057 test cases have been passed, 292 are blocked, 354 have been marked to retest, and 162 test cases are failing. And we also see the percentages assigned to each of these statuses. So let's not uh, care a lot about this particular metrics right now, because we will be touching base on these matrices when we go into the test metrics and measurement session. For now, we are concerned of writing test cases in a test case management tool, which is TestRail. So here we have a section which is calling out in the name of test cases. So what I'll do is click on this particular link, which is going to take me to all of the test cases that we already have in this particular application, which is TestRail. So if you see these, there are different sections on which these test cases have been segregated. So these are the prerequisites. And if you scroll down, there are different software and versions on which we have created the test cases. Then there is another functionality, which is for the hardware and so on. So here what we are going to do is, I see that there is a button on the right top corner which says add test cases. So I'm going to click this particular button, which is going to give me a form. And this particular form is very much similar to the fields that we had on the Excel template that we recently used to create our test case. So the title here is nothing, but it is the test case description that we had filled in here. So I'll just go in and do a real quick copy and paste rather than again writing over the same thing. So, but if you are writing the test cases directly in the TestRail tool or any other test case management tool, so this is something that you have to write in here yourself. Or if you have any test cases already created in an Excel sheet, so TestRail gives you an option to import all of the test cases from that particular sheet into TestRail. So this is where you can drag and drop your Excel file, and then TestRail would automatically be able to pick up the fields that it can identify, and it would pre-fill all of the test cases that you have created in an Excel sheet. So here what we are doing is we are writing the title here. In the sections column, you again can go in and select any of the sections for you, which you are actually creating this test case for. So there are different templates that you can choose from. We are good with the template that we have. So on the type, you can define which type of test case is it. Is it an acceptance type of test case, accessibility, automated compatibility, destructive, or functional? This is a functional one, so I'll select the functional type here. Here, as we were discussing earlier, there are different priorities that are defined in the TestRail. So you can say that this is a high priority test case. And for now, I would leave the estimates, reference, and the automation type fields as it is. In the preconditions, yes, we had the precondition wherein we wanted to check that our application is up and running. So I will do a copy paste of the same precondition, or I could have typed in the same here. So on the steps, yes, we again have those same steps which we can pick up from our Excel sheet, and rather than writing them, I can again do a copy paste. Okay, we have the expected result. So I'll go in and I will pick up the expected result, and we can do a paste here. So now we're done with all of the fields that are required for us to create our test case. So we can do a quick check again that all of the required fields have been filled in, and I can then go in and hit the add test case button. So I see a message that successfully added a new test case. So it is giving me an option to add another test case. So this is just for a reference purpose that this is how you can go in and create your test cases in a test case management tool. And when you have all of the test cases created, when you are going to do an execution, so from this particular test suite, what you can do, or let's create a new one if we can do that real quick. Or what you can do is you have your test suites already created. So test suite would have a number of test cases added to it. So once you execute your test case, what you can do is go in and you can update the results here, as well as you can go in and update the status of that particular test case. So I will say that this is a failed test case. For the next one, I'll go in and say that this is a passed test case. and I'll hit the hit the save button here. So I can even go in and make a test case, say retest. So I can even add a comment here that retest on the next build. So here I will go in and add the test case result here. So this is how you will update the results of your test cases. And once you are done with that, you will see a complete graph showing what percentage have been, what number of test cases have been passed along with their percentages, and a complete status of all the test cases that you have under that particular suite. So this is the demo and the live session that we have on the test case creation and the test case execution using the test case management tool, which is TestRails, or the manual way of writing the test cases, which is through our normal Excel sheet. All right, thank you so much for listening out to me. Hope you have had a great time. Thank you.